Our distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Today I have the honor and the greatest pleasure of opening the second International Tampere Conference in Statistics. Certain professors, I would like that these people come back to me. This way. No.
On now? Yes? Hyvää päivää. Hyvää huomenta. I'm very honored to be the first chairman of the first session of the keynote speakers of the second Tampere, International Tampere Conference on Statistics. It gives me tremendous pleasure to introduce the first keynote speaker, Professor T.W. Anderson from Stanford University, was my teacher 20 to 25 years ago as a graduate student, and has remained a close friend and collaborator over the intervening years. His book, now in a second edition on multivariate analysis, is the book, at least for me, in multivariate analysis. He's going to talk today on multivariate linear relations. Professor T.W. Anderson.
Well, you see, it's worth your while to be kind to your graduate students. You never know when they're going to get back to you. The normal distribution of S would depend on fourth order moments of the X's, but what we're interested in only depends on second order moments.
And therefore, I think it's not necessary for the Finnish people in this audience to introduce Professor Mustonen, but to do it for the rest of the audience. I will tell you in short an old German tale. The hare, always claiming to be the best runner, was once challenged by a hedgehog. After quarreling for some time, it was at last decided to settle the question on an empirical basis. The long rows of a potato field were chosen as their sporting ground, and off they went. When the hare reached the end of his row, he heard the hedgehog say, "I am already here." So they turned for a second try, and again the hare was welcomed by the hedgehogs saying, "I am already here." The hare asked for more, and again he was faced with a stable outcome, "I am already here." So what has this story to do with Professor Mustonen? Nowadays, the hare changed the profession. He is a statistical software producer. And if you look at all those advertisements, you always hear him say, "I am the best." The hedgehog nowadays is called Seppo. But I think there are two essential differences. You never hear him say, "I am already here." So let me do it for him. And I want to stress that many of the ideas we in the statistical computing community talk about were long before thought and mostly worked out by Professor Mustonen. And the second essential difference is the hedgehog in that tale, he cheated. He placed his wife on the other end of the row and let her say this sentence. And I can assure you that Professor Mustonen really was there. So I think let's hear this day where he stands and what the hairs will tell us what we have to think next years. Thank you.
I like to go to the point, and I clear the screen. And as you see, I can type any text in this screen. And when I can use Finnish, I'm pretty quicker. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Paksalari.
Thank you, Arti. It's a great pleasure for me to be here. I'm very grateful to the organizer for their kind invitation. 4 years ago, at the first Tampere seminar, Stein gave a talk on Schur complement and its statistical implications. I think that Stein's lectures opens the door for some kind of presentations, namely presentations concerned with relationships between linear algebra problems and statistical problems.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think we should start the presentation. Today's keynote speaker is Professor George Fox.
I used to think that quality control, as it was called, was a very boring subject, and I think it was. But I think what is happening now is something that's rather different and that has certainly economic consequences that are very important and social consequences that are very important, as well as research consequences which are important. So I thought I would say something about those other aspects, as well as perhaps indicating a couple of research problems that come up. First of all, on the economic aspects, Professor Wheelwright of Harvard is fond of putting up that list of things, automobiles, cameras, stereo components, and so on, and he asks the question, what do they have in common? And the answer is that during the last 10 years, the United States has lost at least 50% of its market to foreign competition in every one of those articles. Another interesting, this was a graph which was put up by Mr. Bakken, who is a vice president of the Ford Motor Company. What it shows is the number of times a car is returned in the first 6 months of its life. These are careful records that are kept in the United States for General Motors, Ford, Chrysler, and European cars. And this covered a period of about 10 years. And you can see that things were not getting much worse, and they weren't getting any better, and they were just about on a level. But during this period, the Japanese cars were doing that. So what is it that they're up to? And what is it that maybe we should be up to? And of course, a major reason for high quality and low cost is use of statistical methods and the use of scientific method in general, and a sort of democratization of simple science.
We are tight with time, so we will have 45 seconds of break, and then we continue with the program. I got asked a few times during the last few days where Augsburg is, and that surprised me a little bit, because the history of Tampere and Augsburg is actually closely related. Tampere would have been founded 2,000 years ago if it were not for Augsburg, because at that time the Romans mounted an expedition to Finland in order to found Tampere, except the day after they had crossed the Alps, they came into an amiable land named Bavaria, and they stopped over in one of the local inns and tried the local yellow water and had a second mug and more mugs, and the next day they decided rather than going on all the way to Tampere, they would stay there and found Augsburg.
I think Professor Arias neglected to mention my most notable accomplishment, which was in 1968, spending a year in Minnesota with George Stein, which a place at that time had a dearth of three-star restaurants. George was not in the best mood in those days, and I did my best to cheer him up. It's my great pleasure to introduce the first speaker this morning, George P.H. Stein. I met George when we both were young assistant professors at the University of Minnesota. From there he moved to McGill and has been on the move ever since, in the best possible sense. To show just how far George has come in the world of statistics, whereas Professor Anderson. I understand that when George was a new graduate student at Columbia, he went to Professor Anderson. He was enrolled in his multivariate analysis class and made an appointment to ask which textbook did Professor Anderson intend to use in his course. George has come a long way.
I wonder who you had breakfast with today.
George will speak to us today on partially ordered idempotent matrices.
Thank you very much, Michael. Well, after that introduction, I think I should say a few words of thanks to various people. I was challenged yesterday at dinner by Professor Anderson that I should say some thank you words in Finnish. Unfortunately, it is not I, but my wife who's taking the Finnish course this week, so my Finnish is limited. But I would like to say a profound thank you to the organizers of this conference, not only for inviting me, but for having organized a superb conference, one that is a benchmark against which other conferences should be measured. Particular thanks to Tarmo Pukila and Simo Puntanen. And I think that
Ladies and gentlemen, it seems that we are about ready to begin the final session. We proposed the honorary doctorship to Professor Rao because of his great scientific contributions and merits in the promotion of research in the University of Tampere.
I had the opportunity to attend the first Tampere conference. No doubt the second one is much bigger in terms of the academic program and the number of delegates attending the conference. The organization of a conference of this magnitude is not an easy task. Professor Pukila and his associates have done very hard work. They will be relieved to know that both the academic program and the social programs were excellent, and we are looking forward to a third conference in Tampere. When I came to the university on Wednesday morning to attend the conference, the first thing I noticed was a poster containing the sketches of the keynote speakers. I was surprised to see that poster. Whenever I used to see posters of Gauss and Euler, I was fondly hoping that 200 years from now, somebody will make a poster of me. I was surprised that during my lifetime, this hope was realized.
We made the decision, the formal decision about this conference in Vienna, Austria, in 1984. We have so excellent small group who have been involved in the arrangements. And that's interesting that this group has been really small. There have been only more or less only 3 or 4 people, and those people have been my role has been, I think that it has been less than epsilon. Besides me, there have been two persons I'd like to mention. The first is Paula Hietala, who has been our banker, and then of course the soul of this conference, Simo Puntanen, who has really done a huge work for this conference. Simo, you have earned this thing. It contains pink champagne. I'm happy to help you to test this champagne. So, Simo, please come here. Simo.
Lamp? The lamp is singing here. Yes.
Simo.
This? Lamp? The lamp is singing here. Yes.
Simo. Simo. Simo.
Our distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, today it's my pleasant duty to open this workshop. When deciding to organize a workshop, we were prompted by the idea to gather together a few groups of scientists working on some joint problems. Today we can see that quite a number of groups will meet during the next 2 days. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish you an interesting and pleasant stay in Tampere. Now, the rector of the university, Professor Mukkila, will speak to us on the subject of the Finnish research jubilee.
Recent accolades that have been accorded to him as an honorary PhD from the University of Tampere, and I asked him how many more of such honorary PhDs he had, and he put out the 10 fingers of his hand. I wonder what he will do when he gets the 11th honorary PhD, which digit he will show us. His talk today is on uncertainty, statistics, and the creation of new knowledge. Professor Rapp.
The given premises constitute the full knowledge, and the derived consequences cannot go wrong if our arguments are correct. There's no doubt that the knowledge we create from observational data is uncertain. But if we know the amount of uncertainty in the inference we are making, that constitutes certain knowledge. It's the logical equation on which the science of statistics is founded. So the key to wise decision making is then quantification of uncertainty.
Irrespective of the name of Tampere meeting, seminar in 1983, conference in 1987, or workshop just now, emphasis always was here on interactions between statistics and linear algebra. Ladies and gentlemen, interface between statistics and linear algebra, Professor Inga Moltke.
Thank you. John Tukey has always used 2 projectors, so I asked for 3 of them, but they only had 2. But my purpose really here was to show how certain probabilistic ideas interface with probabilistic statistical ideas interface with linear algebra, and how linear algebra ideas interface with statistics. I hope some of the people find other examples that Thank you. This is the session on Gustav Elfing. The session came about 3 days before I left the United States. I sent an email to Finland and said, Gustav Elfing was a great statistician. Why don't you have a workshop or a discussion of his work? And I got back an email, that's a great idea. Would you chair it and prepare for it? So here we are. We haven't heard very much about Gustav as a person, but he was a charming, warm, friendly person, very much interested in young people. And I know for myself, I have very fond memories of the times that he was at Stanford and earlier, and I also visited him in Turku at his Hammershus house. I want to talk about a number of problems connected with publications. I think these are very serious problems that we're reaching. And I'd like to confine myself to the question of cost, the number of journals, commercial versus society, and the problem with libraries. And so that creates a problem for the individuals, especially for young people. And I would like to emphasize, I think publications is extremely important for people getting started. If we reject papers from the new PhDs, then we've created a tremendous depression in the way they behave, and we don't want to lose that crowd. It's very, very important that we publish papers by young people.
Today I happened to hear a very interesting discussion between Dr. Stajan and Dr. Olkin. The problem was when these gentlemen visited to Finland, made their first visit to Finland. And it appeared that Dr. Stajan made the first visit to Finland in 1956. After that year, I think that it was the year 1976 in January when George visited for the first time the University of Tampere. Since that time, George has visited to our university so many times that I do not know how many times, but very many. He has been a key person in all of these conference meetings what we have held at the University of Tampere.
Thank you very, very much, Talmo, for those very nice words. Il me fait un grand plaisir de remercier le workshop secretary anonyme, mais qui, selon moi, n'est pas anonyme. I said those words in French, even though I do not yet live in the République indépendante du Québec, though I haven't heard any recent political news, so one doesn't really know. But I would like to give tremendous heartfelt thanks to the very much non-anonymous workshop secretary, who is really two people, Simo Puntanen and Erkki Liski, without whom this conference would not have ever taken place. We've had some discussions. I guess I was somewhat involved in the previous two meetings in Tampere, so we have been thinking about where we might run a second and third workshop that might possibly follow this. There have been some other discussions in various parts of the world. So what we have been thinking about, subject to funding and all of those various things, is that we might try to organize a second international workshop in Hamilton, New Zealand, as a satellite to the International Biometrics Conference. And then I don't always want to push the work to other countries like Finland and New Zealand. I would then propose that the third international workshop be held in Montreal in March of 1995.
And now when I have looked and watched and seen how many papers Jerzy has written, during his visit to the University of Tampere, I do not know exactly what the natural number for a human being means. Dr. Pakala.
Don't need this equipment. Thank you very much, Tarmo. So, the number of these papers can be explained very simply. In comparison to Poland, typewriting machines are much better. So.
You mean in Poland?
No.
We have no typing machine.
But I really had here a terrific year, and I would like to use this opportunity to thank very much to the rector of the university and to the chairman of the department, Erkki Liski, to Simo Puntanen, for applying appropriately to the academy that I was lucky to get this grant. I think that there's some reason that I am the last speaker of that workshop, but I enjoyed every hour of that workshop. I think that we found the formula of the workshop made each of us much busier than during the usual conference, but we also gained, I think, much more.
Simo,